Oh, I think in Vietnam you're going to actually see increasing demand. They've got a fairly big program of building coal-fired power plants, and I think it's something that they're going to be importing a lot more coal in coming years. It will be somewhat incremental. It's not going to be big steps, but you will see over the next 5-10 years more coal flowing into Vietnam. So it's a very positive story for coal demand there. I think the answer to that is yes, it can cope, but it could be made a lot better. The main problem that they have is lack of suitable ports for unloading very large ships. If you're forced to use smaller ships, then the costs go up, not exponentially, but it makes it more expensive on the freight. And you have less efficiencies in your unloading, takes longer, that kind of thing. So if they could get a deep water harbor that could handle bigger ships and more efficient loaders or unloaders, I think that would definitely help them. I think the political climate in the Philippines is a challenge. It's always going to be a challenge. It is a interesting country insofar it's a democracy, but it has a strongman ruler, and there are all sorts of challenges of doing businesses there. But on the other hand, there are lots of opportunities. I think anybody who is looking to invest in the Philippines or do business there has to accept that this is a reality they have to deal with, and as long as you can deal with the risks, then it's not as it's not any worse than a lot of other places where people are quite happy to do business. Well, the obvious answer is Indonesia, but there is a small problem there insofar as that Indonesia wants to reduce the amount of exports. The government wants the miners to reduce the exports. They want to reduce output in order to conserve their coal resources. Indonesia has got a very big coal-fired power plant building program as well. And what they're trying to do is make sure that they have sufficient domestic resources to fuel those for the next 30, 40 years. So it's hard to see Indonesia exporting more. So it's hard to see them actually taking benefit from the increase in coal power throughout Southeast Asia, even though they are the best place to do so. I think what you'd have to do is you'd have to see Indonesia do a lot more exploration work, develop new mines, develop new basins, and reassure the government that they can export more and still meet the domestic market obligations. If you could do that, then you might find that Indonesia is still in the best position. Everybody else is a little bit harder. The Australians are finding it hard to increase their exports. It's very hard to build new mines in Australia. I expect Australian exports to remain largely steady, but also their coal is mainly sought by North Asian buyers because of the higher quality. It's not what the Southeast Asians are necessarily looking for. Other countries, there's not really going to be much more tons coming from South Africa. You'll get a few more tons out of Mozambique, and if the price is high enough, then you'll start to see coal coming from the Americas, but that will be very much price driven. Probably not. It's a sort of thing that we've seen in Indonesia before. New regulations get announced. They look very disruptive. They look, at first glance, quite unworkable. And then gradually, in consultation with the industry and with other players, the rules are modified, watered down, changed a bit, and some kind of consensus emerges. I expect that's what will happen with this as well. But the key point is, the government's made it quite clear that they want Indonesians to be more involved in the export and the transportation and the insurance and the money around their coal exports. And I think that's a trend that's going to continue, and it's not something that is going to go away. So I would expect that the industry will have to get used to the idea of working out how they can meet the government's demands for Indonesians to play a bigger role in the export of coal, and see if they can do that without increasing the costs too much. So you've got a few years to work it out, but I think that's where it's going.